Lightfall's finally out. Witness, he's at our doorstep. Neomuna is open to explore. Callus, he's fresh out of his bathtub. And people are already saying the DLC flopped.
Yikes.
Wow, that was really fast. Well, at least I can still show off this 6-strand build I made and totally not have to scrap it because Bungie decided they were going to release all the strand fragments early. Right? Right? Hello everybody, it's Hater. Welcome back to another Destiny 2 build video. And after dipping my robotic hands into what Strand Warlock has to offer, I came to a conclusion. Woo! Woo! Rattle 'em, boys! From downtown! It's really fun, and I've got a new build that I put together that harnesses the power of Strand Warlock, turning them into a literal summoner style class like in other MMOs. But as always, before we get into the video, if you guys enjoy it, the best way to show support is by giving the video a like and subscribing so you'll never miss out on a brand new video. Threadlings are the name of the game and practically the whole identity of Strand Warlock. Our job is to spam as many of these little guys as possible, and the aspects are what are going to allow us to do so. Mindspun Invocation enhances all 3 of our grenades, making them do different things. Because the subclass is so heavily focused on creating threadlings, without a doubt the threadling grenade is a no-brainer to pair with it. Instead of throwing the grenade to create 3 threadlings like it normally does, Mindspun Invocation allows us to hold the grenade button down and turn them into 5 perched threadlings. These are going to function like normal threadlings, except they permanently revolve around us, waiting to attack something we shoot at, much like guard dogs. Except they're green string worms and blow themselves up to protect their own. Yeah, I don't think this analogy helps. Weaver's Call is the other aspect, and as you could imagine, it also summons threadlings. This time, every time we cast our rift, it summons 3 additional threadlings, plus all of the threadlings we currently have perched at the time of using it. Meaning, if we eat our threadling grenade, then use our rift, we can send a literal army of 8 threadlings towards whatever unfortunate fool tries to stand in front of it. As for the fragments, they don't even begin to explain what this build can do. To put it in layman's terms before we get into it, we're going to be able to refund our melee and grenade energy, and then buff up our threadlings and increase our overall survivability. Starting from the left, Thread of Fury. Whenever we damage enemies with a tangle, which are the green balls that spawn from strand debuffed enemies, it gives us melee energy. This fragment is super important to the build, and I'm going to explain why. There's a lot to unpack here. Strand Warlock's melee Arcane Needle does a few things. For starters, we get 3 charges of it. But the important thing here is that whenever we hit an enemy with the needle, it applies the Unraveling debuff. In other words, they have green darts spew out of their body whenever they take damage, and this will either damage the enemy affected by it or spread to another enemy and make them unravel also like a plague. Whenever those enemies die also, because they're debuffed by Strand, they'll turn into a tangle, allowing us to either pick it up or shoot it to gain melee energy. This is going to create a constant flow of melee energy for the build as long as we have both melee charges to spend and other sources, which I'm going to get into later. The only downside is that in order to get the most out of Thread of Fury, we are basically forced to pick up and throw the tangle because of how the fragment works. To put it simply, the amount of energy that you receive is split up into a few different ways. The first is based on both what rank the enemy is and how many of them you hit with the tangles. For a better idea of what I'm talking about, if we head over to Carl and throw the tangle at just him, nothing else, just Carl, it gives us an entire melee charge back. Then, if we do the exact same thing, spend a melee charge, and pick up the tangle, if we throw it just at a normal red bar enemy, we're only going to get like a fraction of the melee energy that we got from Carl. The other way that this fragment works is also based on if you're shooting the tangle instead of throwing it. Just like how it gives less melee energy if you throw it at a rank and file enemy, shooting the tangle gives even less than that. A great example of this is shooting the tangle right next to Carl, 2 of the nightmare dogs, and a red bar all at the same time. This is only going to give us a full melee charge, even though there are so many higher ranked adds being hit by the tangle's explosion all at the same time. Overall, what I think I'm trying to explain here with how Thread of Fury works, the best case scenario is to always spend a melee charge and throw the tangle to get your melee back. But with how endgame content works like GMs or raids, you may not get the luxury of grabbing your tangle, so shooting it is the least you can do. Plus, some energy is better than no energy, so you might as well just get what you can get. But to get back on track because of the rabbit hole that is Thread of Fury, the rest of the fragments are much more simple. And to start, Thread of Evolution is going to be a must for our build, because it roughly provides a 28% damage bonus to Threadlings and makes them travel further. In a Threadling focused build like this, it's honestly a no-brainer wanting our horde of minions to deal more damage. For the next fragment, Thread of Generation, dealing damage in general generates grenade energy. This fragment, by the way, is no joke. As long as we're dealing damage, it cranks our grenade energy generation up to 11. Combined with some mods later, and we're almost always going to have a Threadling grenade to use. As for the final fragment, I found this slot to be the most flexible of the bunch, but for me, I enjoy using Thread of Warding, so orbs of power that I pick up give me the Woven Mail buff, meaning I take 60% reduced damage for 10 seconds minus headshots, which, let's be honest, enemies in PvE are not going to headshot you at all. Unless they're jackals. Jackals scare me a lot. I still have nightmares about them. But if you do feel like Thread of Warding isn't up your alley though, there are many more options here to choose from, like Thread of Rebirth to spawn more Threadlings, or Thread of Propagation to give your strand weapons unraveling rounds. It really comes down to what you want your loadout to be in the long run. But moving on over to the exotic of choice, and the new exotic boots Swarmers have been a personal favorite of mine so far. It synergizes perfectly with this build. The exotic perk Swarmers, funny enough, allows tangles we create to spawn 2 Threadlings, but the real kicker is the other half of its exotic perk, which causes all Threadlings we create to apply the unraveling debuff. This is insane, because this goes for all Threadlings we're able to create in the build, meaning the 5 from our grenade, the 3 from our rift, and all of the extra Threadlings that spawn from our super. This causes them to spew out green darts and deal extra damage, or infect other enemies and give us new ways to spawn tangles. Speaking of tangles, there's also a hidden interaction that happens between Swarmers and Thread of Fury. Because of how Threadlings work, when they spawn from tangles, they're also coded as a part of tangles. In other words, when the Threadlings damage an enemy, they also give melee energy back on top of what the tangle already gave us, making our melee generation even better than it already was. Now, before we get into the mods and loadout itself, I want to talk about the artifact, because with the new changes to Lightfall, these mods play a massive role in the background for build crafting. And depending on what you use in your loadout, this is going to impact your build somewhat heavily. For my loadout, I wanted to synergize the power of the new Strand SMG, Synchronic Roulette, which, if you guys didn't know, drops from the Terminal Overload on Neomuna whenever Leeming Harbor is in daily rotation. The important thing I want to note about this weapon is that it is not craftable, but if you're familiar with other content creators like Aztecross, for example, there is a super easy cheese to claim the end chest up to 3 times. There'll be a link to his video down in the description if you guys are interested in farming it, but for the reason that I wanted to include it into this build is because of the new Hatchling perk that only rolls on strand weapons. It simply allows Synchronic Roulette to spawn a Threadling every time we kill an enemy with a headshot or multiple enemies in quick succession. And remember, because of Swarmers, that Threadling will also unravel enemies. This paired with the artifact mods like Defiant Armory, Origin Hones, and Allied Unraveling are really going to take the gun to the next level, giving it more damage and the ability to use unraveling rounds. I also want to mention other Strand focused mods here that can help out the build even more, like Authorized Mod Strand. This lowers the cost of all Strand related mods in our armor. Authorized Mods Grenades. This lowers the cost of all grenade related mods in our armor. Then both Untangler and Threaded Blast. Both of these take advantage of those moments when we're not able to pick up a Tangle, because it would be either too dangerous at that time or just not worth grabbing. Both of these mods together make Tangles deal more damage in a larger radius and suspend enemies that get caught in the blast. Something else that is really going to amp up the quality of life in this build here also is the ability to use different element weapons on non-matching subclasses. Because of Bungie replacing the Font of Might system, this season powerful mods like Volatile Flow make a return, and if this was last season, we really wouldn't be able to use it with this build. But because of the new armor charge system, we can mix and match whatever weapons we want, and for me, a Void weapon paired with my SMG is ideal. Null Composure is easily my favorite option out of everything because I can pocket Reservoir Burst until I proc Volatile Flow. But of course, this doesn't mean you have to use it. There are so many other options that you can use in its place. Weapons like Deafening Whisper, the new Harsh Language, or if you really want to cause some problems, even Telesto can take its place. Same thing here goes with the Synchronic Roulette. If you don't want to use it or need to change up your loadout to match champions, Final Warning and Quicksilver Storm are great exotic alternatives. You could even throw Strand completely out the window in this case and use something like Funnel Web with any kinetic exotic like Witherhoard, for example. Or you can keep the Strand synergy going and pair the new craftable Sniper Volta bracket with it. The possibilities for loadouts now are quite literally endless. There is something for everybody. But to get back on track again, let's finish things off with the mods that will be complementing the build. And with Threadlings being such a strong focus, I decided to put everything into gaining our grenade as often as possible. Starting off with the helmet, I'm using Ashes to Assets here so that Threadlings I create with my grenade will give me super energy whenever they kill things. Then I'm also pairing a Strand and Void Siphon mod so that both my SMG and my fusion rifle can create orbs of power to use for armor charge. As for the arms, we're using 2 impact inductions here. This allows us to take advantage of Thread of Fury and our melee having 3 charges. Every time that we throw our Arcane Needle to prime an enemy, it will also refund our grenade energy back. This combined with Thread of Generation is the main reason why my Threadling grenade charges so fast. Then as for a little added extra here, I threw in a Font of Vigor because my armor charge was already going to decay from the mods in my boots, so I might as well buff up my strength stat for free at the same time. However, I will note if your guy's armor is spec'd out for strength, you can swap this mod out for something else like Firepower, or even Heavy-Handed, either will work. Moving on over to the chest piece though, we're keeping it simple, using a damage resistance mod and charged up to increase the amount of armor charge stacks we can have by 1. If you're not worried by the damage resistance mod, by the way, and you feel like it's not even making a difference with it equipped, you can trade it out for another charged up since we're only really using this mod to extend how long we're able to maintain damage buffs. Speaking of which, over at the boots, we're using 2 weapon surge mods to buff up a specific element's damage by 17%. Doesn't matter which element you use as long as a weapon that you use the most. In my case, because I'm using Synchronic Roulette, I want to take advantage of its damage as much as possible. And with it being able to work with the Defiant Armory and Origin Hones mods, I'll get much more out of buffing its damage over my fusion rifle. However, if I really wanted to, because I'm pairing Anarchy with my build, if I wanted to make enemies literally implode on themselves with the Unravel debuff, I could put a singular Arc Surge mod to buff up my Anarchy's damage by 10%. But as for the added mod at the end, it's stacks on stacks. This is going to make any orb of power that I pick up give me 2 stacks of armor charge instead of 1. Finally though, moving down to the bond, this is where I'm going to use Time Dilation here to extend the timer on armor charge because of its decaying over time effect. Then with the 2 final slots, I'm using 2 bomber mods to give me even more grenade energy on top of everything that I already have. Overall though guys, that is going to be the build for today's video. It feels really good to be back and enjoying Destiny again. I had a blast with the Lightfall campaign, but to fill you guys in on where I've been the past few months, I was dealing with a whole lot of burnout from content creation around the end of Season of Plunder. Then eventually a bunch of personal life stuff got in the way around the same time, and I ended up eventually moving to where I am now. I'm still working out all the kinks right now, but overall I'm doing a lot better, and you guys should expect more of my beautiful robot phase across YouTube in the coming days. If you guys have any questions or anything that could improve the build, feel free to leave them down in the comments, and if you want to copy the build for yourselves, there'll be a dim loadout link down in the description. I also started streaming over here on YouTube. I don't really have a set schedule right now on when I'll be streaming, but I plan on streaming at least once every day to hang out and work on builds with you guys. So if you enjoy the type of content that I put out, I'll see you over there. But anyways, I hope you all enjoy the video. I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye bye.